information, and there'll be signs out about where each of those workshops will be held at that time. One other thing I just want to call your attention to, and that is that we do have a number of sponsors here for our event this weekend who have donated a couple of items that we are auctioning off. And so we are having a silent auction, and those things are at the table right in front of the coffee bar here. And so as you're walking around and mingling, just take a look at those couple of items and see if those are things that you're interested in. We'll be announcing the results of that after the end of the afternoon session here. So let us begin with a time of worship here, and I'm going to invite Merle to come up and lead us in that.
We're going to begin with a hymn that I'm sure you all know. As a young man, when I was growing up in our home, we were a family of 10 children, and so our parents loved to sing, and so we always sang before we ate our breakfast. And this one was one that we always did, and that was, "I Owe the Lord a Morning Song." I owe the Lord a morning song of gratitude and praise for the kind mercy He has shown in lengthening out my days. He kept me safe another night. I see another day. Now my spirit as a dove direct me in His way. Keep me from danger and from sin. Help me thy will to do. So my heart be pure within, and I thy goodness know. Keep me from them, or call me hand, wherever night may be, and save me, Lord, for Jesus' sake. He shed His blood for me. It's a little difficult to see up here because the light is so bright. I was wondering if it could be turned down a little bit so it shines on my music. Now in the your booklet, would you find 357? And we're going to sing, "O Master, Let Me Walk with Thee." O Master, let me walk with Thee in lowly paths of service free. Tell me Thy secret, help me bear the strain of toil, the fret of care. Help me the slow of heart to move by some clear winning word. Teach me thy wayward feet to stay, and guide them in their homeward way. Teach me the patience still with thee, in closer, dearer company, in work that keeps faith sweet and strong, in trust that triumphs over wrong, in hope that sends a shining ray far down the future's broadening way, in peace that only thou canst give. Oh, with thee, O Master, let me live. Thank you.
This time we're going to continue on with our reports from our various regions. And so I'd like to introduce Wayne Stuckey. Wayne and his wife Carol are co-directors of Region 3, along with Jeff Kohler, who is the Region 3 Regional Operations Coordinator. So Wayne, welcome.
All right, thank you.
In shady green pastures, so rich and so sweet, God leads his dear children along. Where the water's cool flow bathes the weary one's feet, God leads his dear children along. Some through the waters, some through the flood, some through the fire, but all through the blood. Some through great sorrow, but God gives us all in the night season and all the day long. Sometimes on the mount where the sun shines so bright, God leads his dear children along. Sometimes in the valley, in the darkest of night, God leads his dear children along. Some through the waters, some through the flood, some through the fire, but all through the blood. Some through great sorrow, but God gives us all children alone. Away up in glory, eternity stay. God leads his dear children alone. Some through the waters, some through the flood, some through the fire, but all through the blood. Some through great sorrow, but God gives us song in the night season and all the day long.
Praise be to God. Good morning, I'm Wayne Stuckey, and I'm Region 3 Board Co-Chair with my wife, Carol, who could not be here today. But that review says more about where we see Jesus in Region 3 than I could ever say in 30 minutes to an hour. We consistently hear that MDS about relationships. I know that our partners see Jesus in each of us as they work together to respond, rebuild, and restore. This morning we're privileged to have Cristina Cornejo, Program Manager for the Rebuild Texas Fund, a collaborative project of the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation and One Star Foundation. Cristina has been very instrumental in the success of Hope Meadows project in Bloomington, Texas. So, Cristina, please come on up, tell us what you do and about the fruits of our labor.
Good morning. Here we go. Well, it's such an honor to be here with you this morning. As Wayne said, my name's Cristina Cornejo, and I'm Program Manager with Rebuild Texas Fund. I thought this morning that we could do a little bit of background on exactly what the fund is, and I'd give you a little bit of perspective from funders on what we think about when we're funding organizations and talk to you about the collaborative efforts and what it's like to have an amazing partner like MDS. So, the Rebuild Texas Fund was created out of Hurricane Harvey 2.5 years ago, and after that we raised $100 million, and thus far we have awarded the full $100 million across 293 projects. Now, what's important about that is to see that we've worked with 1.1 million individuals thus far, and none of that would be possible if it wasn't for collaborative efforts and amazing partners like MDS. When we started working on the ground with all of our partners, we realized that none of the work that we do and none of the funds that we had would be possible if it didn't have good partners that were able to help us, the volunteers that were able to help us. So everything that we're able to do is only because of all of you in this room. Here's kind of a brief timeline of when things began. So like I said, we were created entirely out of Hurricane Harvey, and the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation and the One Star Foundation came together along with the governor there in Texas, and they decided this was something that they wanted to fundraise for, and that we really needed to put our hats together and help the people of Texas, because we knew that it would take a while before state and federal dollars, and I'm sure you've always seen that on the ground before. It takes a lot of time before some of that money comes in, and so it's on us and the private donors that start this money flowing and the private philanthropy dollars to start it. In October of 2017 is when our first grant started, and within that first round, MDS was one of our very first grantees. grantees. We saw all of the great work that you were able to do, and we awarded $200,000 to MDS in our very first round. And after that is when I began my first relationship with MDS. In March of 2018 is when I got to meet, I got an email from Kevin King and met him. He said that he and Tom Smucker were coming into Texas and they wanted to show me some of the projects that were going on in Texas. And I said, sure. I had just joined the team and decided to take a road trip. And so they flew into Austin, and they said, well, if you're coming from Austin and we're flying into Austin, why don't we just go together? And I said, sure, why not? I don't know who you are. You don't know who I am. How could this go wrong? So sure enough, they had me pick them up at their hotel, and it was at that moment, I think, as I started driving to the hotel where I thought, I don't even know what either one of them looks like. How do I know I'm picking up the right two men at a hotel? This is not the smartest thing I've ever done. But he said, oh, I'll be out there and I'll be in my vest. So I saw them, and we had a 3.5-hour trip down to Rockport, Texas, where we began bonding and talking about the work that he had done and the things that I had seen working on the government side of things. And we bonded over not just disaster work, but just our passion about helping people and helping others, and wanting to build relationships and help all other organizations. So through August of 2019 is when we awarded all of our grants. And you'll see that in August of 2019 is when we fully deployed all $100 million. And this kind of just gives you a broad idea of what we thought about in funding. I know housing becomes kind of the most prominent thing that people think about when hurricanes first hit. It's the first thing you see is putting people back in homes. But it's really a holistic view is what we took when we looked at things, is what does it take to make a community whole? And housing is a large part of that, but there are so many other aspects to that. And so we wanted to be sure that we started funding all around that. And so you'll see that we have a large area in education and childcare. We wanted to make sure that we got our schools back up and running. Whether that was funding school supplies or a lot of our daycare centers needed small items to get back up and running, or tuition to help students to get back in. So we assisted in that kind of thing. You'll see health up there. Our major area of health has been mental health. As I'm sure you've seen when you're out volunteering, the mental health needs of the individuals that we deal with are high. The trauma that they deal with, whether you're a child or an adult, whether it's your first disaster or your 10th disaster, they need someone to talk to. They need to be able to, speak about what they have gone through. It's quite traumatic. And so we wanted to be sure that we were helping individuals in that. When the hurricane hit the coast, one of the largest areas that was affected is tourism, especially along the lower coast. So one of our first thoughts was we need to get small businesses back up and running. So you think about tourism and things like that. So we helped with small business loans and grants and that sort of thing. The workforce and transportation, that was a big deal to us, and it still is, getting our workforce back up and running. We have done several grants in the area of getting construction workers back up, because what we have found is we don't have a great educated workforce or trained workforce and skilled workforce in construction. And we have a lack of volunteers. We are so grateful for everything that MDS does and is able to come in and help us with the most skilled labor that we've probably ever seen. However, it's important for Texans to also start to learn how to build their own skilled labor. So we have started that as well. We have housing and then community and economic development, and that's kind of where we've seen some of our big infrastructure. Everything from water towers that fell. So we thought you can produce all the homes in the world, but if you don't have good, clean water going to them, if you don't have proper sewage, all of the things and the infrastructure that are needed, because those were destroyed in the hurricane, then you can't have good, safe housing. And so we wanted to make sure that we were doing all of that as well. So this kind of is a map of Texas, and it gives you an idea of the 41 counties that were in the declaration, and the 5 areas in which we have funded. Houston always kind of takes everyone's breath away because it's the largest area population-wise. What we decided at the very beginning was because Houston's so large, we didn't want to fund in that area as much, and so we wanted to focus outside of those areas. We thought there was going to be a lot of money coming in there, and rural areas we knew don't get as much attention, that it's hard to fund in those areas. So that's where we've really paid attention to. And then our strategy, we wanted to be different. We wanted to be community-led, collaborative on the ground. And in this sense, I will say we kind of took a page out of the MDS playbook. We learned how to be collaborative and how to be on the ground. But the way we did that was by listening to our partners like MDS. I will say there's not a week that goes by that I do not hear from Kevin, Tom, Jeff, Jerry, somebody on the ground who is emailing, telling me how things are going, but they're also letting me know how other groups are doing or other needs that we may not see. And that's so important because everything that you do and that your volunteers see and do, and when I come out and I visit and I meet with your volunteers, everybody is so open and so honest. And I appreciate that because that helps me shape what grants will look like in the future for not just MDS, but for all of the community. Again, this just kind of goes a little bit more into our strategy about being, Harvey-centered and the impacts. And this is the real meat of, I guess, everything today, some of our project highlights. So yesterday you heard a little bit from Kevin about Hope Meadows, and it's a project that we've been working on together and we are extremely proud of. So Hope Meadow, it's a collaborative project, and again, you've probably heard the word collaboration, partnership. None of these things happen in a vacuum. Nothing happens with any one of us. Not one funder, not one organization. It's with all of our partners working together, and that's what's so beautiful about it. And this is with Mennonite Disaster Services, Disaster Aid Ohio, Samaritan's Purse, the Victoria County Long-Term Recovery Group, the Victoria County themselves, the Commissioner's Court, UMCOR, we have the Golden Crescent Habitat for Humanity, Center for Disaster Philanthropy, and then Rebuild Texas Fund. Those are some of the major partners who've been in this collaborative effort. What we decided, it was a year ago, and actually, I think the idea probably stemmed from Kevin. He came and he sat down with me a year ago, and we started looking at Bloomington. And as we stated, MDS was working on a home here and a home there, and he said, I think we can do more. And I said, okay, what are you thinking? And he said, imagine if we built a subdivision, and imagine if we brought these individuals up out of, lower ground to higher ground that doesn't flood, and, we were really building this community up. And I said, that'd be amazing. And he said, well, we've done that before. And so we really started walking through the logistics. And as you can imagine, it takes a little bit to bring something like this together, to bring all of these partners to the table, to get everybody to agree. And it was a work in progress. We had to, purchase land, so we had to make sure that we had funders that were willing to purchase land to build infrastructure. We purchased raw land, and then from the very beginning, we had to put in water, sewer, electrical lines, all of that, roads had to come in. And then we partnered, and MDS said, we believe Disaster Aid Ohio can come in, and they're going to help us, and they're going to be bussing down volunteers. And that partnership has been a blessing, and it has been the most amazing thing that I have seen. They bust down about 50 volunteers every 2 weeks, and they are the most skilled volunteers, the happiest volunteers that we have seen. And every 2 weeks, they trade out, and we currently have, so this started in October, and it's going to run through April. And if you look at that pace, they will be building 30 homes within that time frame. So that's about a house a week, which is an astronomical pace. And we have private contractors in Texas that aren't building at that kind of pace. And so it's really been a blessing for us and for the people of Bloomington. We've had our first home dedications. So the first 10 were dedicated in January, about the second week of January. And we will have our second 10 dedicated on February 27th. So we're very excited about that. This project has grown by leaps and bounds, and again, it's all thanks to amazing partners, thanks to MDS, and like I said, we couldn't have imagined that our grant of $1.4 million could have gone any better than it is going right now. And here's a few photos just to kind of show you some of the work that's been going on. You'll see at the bottom there's Kevin. And he talked a little bit yesterday about Commissioner Danny Garcia. Well, there's the commissioner down at the bottom. And then this photo I took from the very first home dedication with Disaster Aid Ohio. And then I wanted to highlight because, yesterday, I know we talked a little bit about Puerto Rico and some of the needs there, and they did talk about, especially the trauma, and then in the Carolinas, some of the, the mental health needs and the trauma. Here's one of the things that we funded, and I thought that you would find it interesting, as well as the introduction to Camp Noah actually came through MDS. Again, Kevin King is amazing, and I find that if there's 6 degrees of separation, there's probably only 3 with Kevin. He knows everyone. And in that very first meeting that I had with him in the car, he asked kind of about the grants that we were doing, and I said, we're really wanting to get into some mental health grants. And he said, have you ever heard of Camp Noah? And I said, nope, I never had. And he said, okay, just a minute. And he picked up his cell phone, and I kind of looked at him, and he was making this phone call immediately. And he said, oh, hi, this is Kevin King. I'm with MDS. And I just wanted to let you know I'm going to be introducing you to Cristina Cornejo with Rebuild Texas Fund. And he was calling the executive director at Camp Noah. And so a week later, we were in email contact with each other and working through what a grant might look like with Camp Noah. And after that, we built a partnership. And and funded 20 summer camps with them. And so what Camp Noah is they're an organization with Lutheran Social Services out of Minnesota, and they work with children who are from kindergarten through 5th grade, and they do summer camps, after school camps, and they help with the trauma and PTSD after disasters, after natural disasters. So they come in and they have worked after earthquakes, fires, hurricanes, tornadoes, you name it, and every major natural disaster. Camp Noah's come in afterwards to work with the children, and they work with kids in groups of 50 at a time, and I have been through these camps with them. They're absolutely amazing. They have these volunteers that are much like MDS, that are so passionate and really lead with all of their hearts and want to help these kids. And so we were able to fund 20 camps with them. Here are a few photos from some of those camps. And if they say a photo's worth 1,000 words, but I've got a couple videos here that I thought might be better.
It was like the middle of the night. My mom and dad came in here and they told me to get up and come in their bed. I'm like, okay, what's wrong?
The water started coming in and we couldn't get out. I brought the kids up to the attic so they wouldn't see the house go under. My son fell asleep. Lila did not.
It's the top of the house, so whenever it like thundered, it like shook it. I just got scared.
Lila went from being super happy to very nervous about things. She wasn't sleeping through the night anymore, and whenever we would go to school in the morning, she would say that her stomach hurt. As a parent, you want to make the world happy and beautiful and perfect for them, and sometimes that's just out of your control.
When things are tough, I learn a lot about who I am and what I've got. All right, one more time.
Camp Noah gives children a place where they can unload.
Stay there forever. No one can ever.
We teach them how to process their feelings, their trauma on a daily basis.
We do songs and activities. It was all pretty fun.
The music, the activities, the arts and crafts, it's all designed to very gently unfold how the child feels.
My cousins got separated from their mom and dad, but then they found their parents again.
Once they start to tell others their stories, they become lighter and they start to become children again.
That looks really good.
It was exciting to see her super happy about something again, which tells me that she didn't realize what she was doing was healing.
They get preparedness packs, they keep a bottled water in there. We're trying to teach these children skills toward resiliency.
They taught me to be braver whenever something like that happens, that you're not alone. It really helped me a lot.
The stomach aches went away. She's not waking up in the middle of the night, and she's just your typical little 8-year-old girl now.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, we had been working at the Rebuild Texas Fund on a video to highlight the collaboration with MDS at Hope Meadows, and we actually just finished it this week. So we are hoping to go public with it right at the same time as the next home dedication on the 27th. But because I got to be here with all of you, I definitely wanted to share it first and foremost with all of you. So.
In Victoria County, Bloomington was the area that was most affected by the hurricane. It was the folks down in my area that needed help. Even if they wanted to rebuild, they couldn't. They couldn't afford to.
The hurricane never really left us. I felt hopeless, I'm not gonna lie. I felt like Everything we had worked for was gone.
You know, where are we going to get the help? We don't have the money. He was on disability. We can't make it on $800. I said, how are we going to do this? How are we going to come through?
People are wanting help. The fear that I had was, I'm not able to help these people, and they're depending on me.
The day we met Commissioner Danny Garcia, looks like he hadn't slept in 2 weeks. And he looked at me and he said, can you help my people? The Mennonite Disaster Service is a volunteer network of Anabaptist churches. When a neighbor is in need, we go help them. Throughout Bloomington, we were repairing some homes, one off here, one off there, and it just felt like it was not enough. This whole thing of resiliency, like how do you build back a stronger community? So when we found this 26-acre property and said, look, if we could find the funding, we can put 30, 40 homes here, still think there was a sense of disbelief. And yet there was a little bit of spark. Hope starts to get nurtured. You nurture it some more. And suddenly that spark came alive.
Next thing you know, they've got RVs here, they've got 30 people coming in, and it gets crazy quick.
It's been a windfall of collaboration. The city, the county government, the national partners. We have been very fortunate, to have that type of collaboration even 2 years after the disaster.
The total amount of work we're expecting is 30 weeks. That's one house a week that you're building. That's amazing. What we're seeing here today is what can happen when people come together with a dream and put their will to it. We're regaining that sense of community to say, we need each other. We're in this together, and we're going to rebuild back.
Through the struggle, the most important thing that I learned is the compassion of humanity. We did lose hope, but now we're going to be living on a street called Hope.
Sometimes I can't believe these people, they all got together to build all these homes. We've struggled all our lives. So if this is happening right here, and I'm excited, how much more will we walk in that door? And they hand us that key and say, this is your home.
I can go home at night thinking, okay, all the work that I put in and all the sacrifice that we had to make as a town, seeing this is worth it.
And last but not least, just thank you. Thank you, not just from Rebuild Texas Fund, but thank you from the state of Texas. We would not be at our level of recovery if it was not for MDS, for your volunteers, for your leadership, for your collaboration, for your love. Everything that you have brought to our state, we just cannot thank you enough. There was an article that was written in the Houston Chronicle about a year ago, and it talked about what MDS has brought to our state and what the volunteers have brought. In the article, if you had the online version, you could actually click on the singing. They filmed and they recorded the singing that went on, and it talked about the couples and the families, how this has actually helped to heal them. And so the message that I'd like to leave you with is, yes, you help us to repair and to rebuild homes, and for that we thank you. But for even more than that, you help us repair and rebuild spirits and rebuild communities, and that we can never thank you enough. So, thank you.
All through the waters, all through the storm, Jesus came and stood among us. Thank you, Wayne and Cristina. It was very moving. I'd like to introduce Region 4, our leaders now. Roger Sharp is our Region Board Chair, and Stephen Wiest is our Regional Operations Coordinator. So.
Thanks, Ron. Good morning. I kept asking the Lord, how do you want me to show Jesus among us? I didn't get an answer. And I sat back and watched you, Jeff, and Wayne. Wayne just lost a loved one. Jeff and Becky Kohler had their house burned to the ground in August. And there may be some of you here who are carrying some pain for a loved one back home or a situation. And the Holy Spirit said, Roger, I'm among you. I'm with you. Just pray. So shall we pray? Heavenly Father, we lift up Wayne and Carol as they struggle through this time of loss. Bring peace to both of them as they are separated, but still at work with MDS. Be with Jeff and Becky as they continue the rebuilding of their home. And the many days that Jeff has gone serving MDS, trying to rebuild hope when he still needs all the peace and quiet that you can give him and the strength for both of them in rebuilding their home. And Lord, I pray for all of those who may be hurting, maybe this year, maybe this week. And we just give that all to you in Jesus' name. Amen. This past year, in terms of disasters in Region 4, has been much, much better than last year, especially with the fires in California. Yes, we still had them, and people lost homes, but the destruction and death toll we had in Paradise was not repeated. Several other states had a few fires, and California had an earthquake in the Trona and Ridgecrest areas. With this in mind, we continue to rebuild in Saipan and California, as all of the Region 4 board members served as project directors, project coordinators, and volunteers. Wow. That is a lot of meetings, that's a lot of events, and that's a lot of time invested in helping others. Jesus among us. I am thrilled to have so many devoted people in leadership and then get to the project sites and swing a hammer. On April 15th, 2019, Region 4 added one more to our leadership team. Steve Wiest became our first regional operations coordinator to be devoted to Region 4. His expertise in construction and dealing with codes and permitting are already being noticed by Mennonite Disaster Service volunteers and leadership. So I would like to introduce to you Steve Wiest, our new rock. Would you please welcome him to the stage for a few words before we begin our slideshow presentation. Steve?
Well, you make it sound like a rock star or something. Thanks, Roger. In 1975, I was 20 years old, and I was on my first MDS project near Birmingham, Alabama at Pell City, building a house for a white widow lady in a black neighborhood with 20 Amish guys. And I had never seen Amish before. This California country boy was going through double culture shock, but I loved it. That day was the first day of my life's career in construction, and I learned a lot from Manny Fisher and Amos Lance and those guys. Well, in the last 10 years, I began volunteering again with MDS. And it's really hard to see here. And over, I was amazed to see Jesus working among us and the lives that were affected among, of course, the clients that we built the house for, but also among the volunteers. It changed my life, and God began working in my heart. Well, at that time, Jeff Kohler was regional coordinator for Regions 3 and 4, which stretched him from the Mississippi River to Saipan, which is 8 time zones. And then a few years ago, MDS leadership decided to divide his territory. He could focus on Region 3 and hire somebody for Region 4. As soon as I heard that that was a possibility, something jumped in my heart, and I said, that's the job for me. I had a construction company for 30 years, and all my employees left and went to start their own business or retired. One went to jail. But I saw that as God moving me in a different direction. How can you argue? So I threw my hat in the ring and applied for the job, and then I started on staff last April, about 10 months ago. So I'm the new guy. If I make mistakes, I got a good excuse. But I love working with MDS people, the compassion and caring for people in need, the quality of construction that they're dedicated to, and the quality in the relationships. And doing it all in the name of Christ. So thanks for giving me this opportunity. Okay, Roger.
When we got our first rock, I had to decide, what am I going to do with Steve? Number one, make him a team member. Just because it's rock and RBC, I want to be together. This is my support. He is my support. I am his support. We need to be a team, not separated. Well, being a coach for 40 years, that is extremely important. And Steve and I are just having a lot of fun working together as we move into this new relationship. Region 4 consists of the western states, including Alaska, Hawaiian Islands, Saipan, Tinian, Guam, and America Samoa. Kim Shantz is our chair in Arizona, and he served in Lake Isabella and Ukiah. Here we see the Arizona unit rebuilding a ramp for Reuben. Roger Riley and Leila Riley are co-chairs of the California unit. Both worked on the 2 homes completed in Lake Isabella. California now has 3 vice chairs, including Pat Powell, Judy Powell, Stephen D. Bell, and Mel Curry. Because we're such a long state, we needed to divide it up to cover all the VOAD meetings. Steve Wiest had a work day in Fresno, California, at the Bethany Church, where volunteers constructed walls for house number 2, and that was being built in Lake Isabella. Robert and Sally Unrau worked 4 different projects in 1 year as project directors and office manager. Robert was instrumental in re-energizing the Idaho unit with new officers. Robert is now the Idaho unit chair. John Colvin is the chair for Oregon. He and his wife Wendy served in Puerto Rico as project directors, and several months later, he served in Saipan in the same position. Oregon was the site of the Region 4 annual meeting, and there were no disasters in Oregon. Yay. The Washington unit had built 4 homes after the 2015 fires in Omak. This octagonal house was being built by the owner when he became overwhelmed by the work. Imagine that if you're looking at the pictures. Volunteers in Washington decided to assist him and have had a lot of fun on the different home build they were given. Todd Hayworth is the chair, and his family served in Womack, Texas. Here's where Saipan is. Can you see it? It has a red circle. There isn't really a red circle in the Pacific Ocean, but it takes 25 to 35 hours, and then you may have to add an extra day depending on where you live. So we have people working there right now on Saipan, and it's circled. The other circle is the Hawaiian Islands. So to give you a perspective of the travel it takes to get there. Roofing remains the main repair. We are also doing electrical, plumbing, windows, doors, and minor repairs now. Some disaster victims are still living in tents. We now have repaired over 60 homes. The government is continually checking to see what new methods Mennonite Disaster Service is doing and the quality of their work. 2 men from the island of Tinian worked with us and learned what we were doing that helped us keep our roofs on after Super Typhoon U2. Now, Tinian's only 10 minutes away. Hop on a plane, you're up, you're down. It's very difficult for a group to go in and repair. But soon, FEMA called the MDS volunteers and leadership and said, hey, we'd like to have a couple MDS folks come over and show us what you're doing and why it's working. Well, several volunteers said they would go, and they offered to sleep on the beach those 2 nights. What a beautiful sight to see when disaster victims wanted to help their community. One day in Saipan, a victim showed up to bring coconuts to the Mennonite Disaster Service volunteers for repairing his roof after Typhoon Soledor. His home survived Super Typhoon U2. We see this quite often when the victims have their new home and their generous offerings. Why would you come? Why would you give up time? In Ukiah, we are building 4 houses. The complex fire destroyed 350 homes. This area is also in a high-risk earthquake zone and wildfires in a wildfire area. 1 house is being built on Native American land that requires no permits and no inspections. Yay! The rest of them require all of that. Somebody's having fun. With its background of burnt trees and devastated hillsides, this is the house that we've been working on lately, and the roof and the sidings are now installed. Smoke, fire, and tears. Paradise burnt to the ground in less than 1 day. The town lost homes, businesses, schools, churches, and the hospital. 10% of the town of 26,000 people was left standing. Some people had their insurance canceled just before the fire. The California unit, Region 4, and the binational office are meeting with the long-term recovery group, and we are hopeful of a project in Paradise in the fall. Now to look at a couple of our projects. Ukiah is the circle that's near the Pacific Ocean. You can see San Francisco. The next map shows where we've been in Clear Lake. And then the last map would be of Paradise. So we've kind of been continuing to look in those areas to work. Daryl from Lake Isabella is talking with a volunteer about the journey from the fire to the completion of his new home. Rebuilding hope. Realized. And now we have a video with Daryl explaining what it was like as they ran and got away from the fire.
My folks had just passed away. My mom passed away 13 months before the house went down. My dad died 9 months after my mom. He died of a broken heart. Being the only girl out of 6 kids, everything came to me and my mom. Her cookbooks, all the writing she had from a gift at a wedding. Things like that, you know, I can't replace. But this is here for me to start again and hopefully give to my children. And I thank you guys for that very much so.
You're losing it again.
Again. Absolutely. And I've been going through a hard time. The house burning down. With my son crying out.
And you kind of mentally said, okay, we're going to grab this.
We had talked about it a lot, you know,
yeah.
And what we would do, but we never formulated a plan.
Yeah.
The important papers, that's what I grabbed, and the wife got the animals. And then I grabbed some underwear.
You got to have that.
And we left. That was, and a pillow. That was it.
God is good. Yes, He is. He's good all the time. God is good. You know He is. He's good all the time. You can search the whole world over.
Region 4 would like to thank you for all the volunteers that came out and made the travel to the West. And thank you to Lidditz, I would say Pennsylvania headquarters, for their support. Every time I called, we got what we needed, or we got the support that we needed. We have to be a team. And now here goes the coach part. If we don't work as a group, if we don't work together, and we're human beings, so we all have different personalities and characteristics, but when we're on the same page with Jesus, we can move and do things whenever things go wrong, because He's there. He's with us. He may give you trials and tribulations that you don't want, but there must be a learning curve in that journey. We thank you so much for all that you have done for Region 4, and continue to pray for us as we grow. And we're so excited to have so many new volunteers. It's amazing when we built the walls in Bethany Church parking lot. It was 105. So we had to quit at noon. Out of that, we got quite a few volunteers and 2 new PDs. So you never know what's going to happen at each event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roger, and thank you, Steve. Welcome aboard, Steve. We're glad to have you here as a part of our team, and we've already appreciated your great contribution here. Well, we're going to take a break here in a few minutes. We'll come back here at 10:25, and we'll resume. A couple things that we want to do right before we break up, however, and let's see. Greg, would you come up and give me a hand here? We want to just take a straw poll, see a show of hands here in terms of the 4 workshops that are being offered this afternoon. We're still trying to figure out the best rooms for those. So we're going to ask you to raise your hand if you think that you're interested in going to the following workshops here. Greg's going to help us take account for that. So, first workshop is on effective volunteer engagement. If you have been looking at the workshops and you think you're interested in going to that workshop, would you raise your hand, please? Okay. I'm not going to be any help here, Greg. I can't see anything. So. Okay. MDS construction standards and problem solving. Okay, thank you. Tools for telling the MDS story. Okay, and case management by MDS. Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. That doesn't preclude the rest of you that didn't raise your hand to attending any of the workshops, but that gives us a hand. Again, the workshops will all be in the education wing, and there will be signs pointing to the various rooms as to where they're going to be held. At this point now, we're ready to take a break. I want to just remind you about the silent auction that you can check out the items there. And we especially want to thank Goshen Health here in Goshen, Indiana, who has sponsored our morning break. And so be thinking of them with gratitude as you're enjoying your break here. Thank you.